Good afternoon. It is Friday, and you are listening to Podtax. My name is Cameron, and I am your host. Please be sure to leave a like, please be sure to leave a rating, and of course, subscribe if you want to hear more content from yours truly. Helps me out, helps the podcast out, and helps everything that we want to do grow together. So if you do have the capacity to leave a rating, a like, or even share with your best friend, I would be ever so grateful. Today, we're gonna just stop and take a second to breathe. Not so much of a long episode today, but just one where we can sit back and discuss the world around us. Without further ado, let's hop right on in. I think it's hard to reconcile sometimes the necessity of needing to show up and also wanting to make sure that you're providing for yourself. That is, when we talk about wanting to pursue our own goals, our own ambitions, our own dreams, it also comes at the expense of, reality in some senses. Because going viral or doing something that we feel like will matter doesn't necessarily mean that it will take off at a record pace. I'm speaking, of course, of my own experience at this point in time. Building tax and tax media has taken up a significant chunk of my day, both with the right brain leaning daily tax, pod tax, what you're listening to, and starting out by even wanting to do a news publication. Pair that with the great fantasy story and everything on the left side of my brain, and all of a sudden I'm spending 8 to 10 hours a day producing, recording, mixing, writing, doing voiceovers, the whole 9 yards. And between it all, it's one of those things where I'm not working a quote-unquote day job. This is my job, legally speaking. But beyond that, it's not something that is growing at a pace where I certainly would like it to. And it's like, I sit here and I look at what levers I can pull. And one of the things I've used in my marketing, either on TikTok videos or YouTube shorts, or trying to remember what the great fancy story is, I'm properly shit at marketing. That is, it's one of those things where appealing to the masses is like, I can make this stuff. I can do everything that I do. But attracting people in, the tools that are available to me are just something that I'm continuing to learn and understand. But beyond that, there's this, I don't want to call it cognitive dissonance because it's a very visceral realization, let me tell you. But the understanding is that what I need to do on a daily basis also is prohibiting me from, I want to say prohibit because it's an active choice to devote time, effort, and energy into making this my product, the thing that I sell to you. And through that, the idea is that subscribers will be gained, people will come in and want to listen, sponsors will want to make a contribution or be part of this. But I think as I've gone through about 3 months of this so far, my understanding of what it needs to actually build it may have been presumptuous. I don't want to discredit my own lack of understanding. I don't know what I don't know. And I think that bodes true for a lot of people. I mean, why do restaurants start? Most of them start and fail within a year. And that's just because many of the owners who want to do it don't understand that you need all the different equipment costs, funding, investors, so on and so forth. Meanwhile, I'm here trying to build a business from scratch, from zero. I'm not taking out loans. I'm not entering in some sort of underhanded dealings with the upstate New York mafiosos to, deliver me onto some sort of financial salvation. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do it the right way, the way I know how, which is to just simply make stuff. Alas, and while growth is occurring, small as it is, it's one of those things where, keeping the faith only extends so far as how many dollars and revenues are coming in. Because anyone can be convinced to do anything. Anyone can devote themselves into a believable state of well-being when it comes to their ambition, because it's the drive, it's the passion, it's understanding that we are who we are, and that's not a bad thing. It's just, well, we need to take a second to actually understand the reality of the situation. And my reality is that for most people who are trying to do what I do, they start as a side project and then work their way up once they hit some sort of threshold. And they do so by also operating under a 9 to 5 and continuing on through that. I'm going about it in the opposite direction, where this is my full-time job right out of the gate. And that's scary. And it's one of those things that as I reflect and see the dollar signs and try to make sense of everything, the understanding of work, for me, certainly is put into perspective. A perspective that says to me, this is what I want to do. Why would I be applying for anything else in the moment? And it's a viscerally hard, it's 9:30 in the morning. Please excuse my lack of decorum insofar as my vocabulary. But it's just a difficult thing to understand that to build something, there needs to be a semblance of authenticity to it. It needs to be something that I believe in, that I want to commit to, and I don't think anyone can begrudge me that, or anyone for pursuing their dreams. But when the rubber meets the road, the reality happens to be that for a lot of these different things, if your product is a digital something, for me, it's podcasting, the Great Fantasy Story Bites, just the nature of supporting me and wanting to be a part of the growth that is affording me this chance to build something, right? It's my selling point is idealism, or rather perspective idealism. At least it is for pod tax, brass tacks, daily tax, all things tax media. And then, of course, you have the Great Fantasy Story, which is a little bit more salient in that regard. I mean, why pay $20 to $30 for a book when you could pay me $5 a month and I give you something every single day? Weekday. I'm not that much of a machine. But all that is to just underscore the point that in order to produce all this stuff, in order to make and contribute and do the things that I do, it takes time. And it also takes away attention from making finding a job my full-time job, as the quote goes. Like, to run it all back, this is what I do on a daily basis. I wake up around 8 o'clock, give or take. I wake up at 7 and then scroll through the news, get my feeds going, do a little, make sure that my account is like, everything's rocking and rolling on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, checking to see if there's any comments I need to respond to. Then I get out of bed and I record daily tax for the day. It's the very first thing I do before I eat breakfast even. And between recording and mixing and editing and posting to, I've stopped posting to Blue Sky, so let's see, it's TikTok, Substack, Instagram, and now YouTube Shorts. That takes about half an hour, maybe an hour, depending on what I want to talk about or upload time. And to build daily tax, it's just one of those things where it's like, what's the news story of the day? What is the most interesting thing that I can pick? I could do it multiple times a day, but I think that, if we're talking about a show, quote unquote, it kind of is, it makes sense to me to do daily tax. It's like, here's the major soundbite of the day. Let's understand why it's important. That's not to say that I don't make more videos for tax media and everything else, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, let's just try and focus our attention just a little bit, and then we can follow up later on. But I'll do that. And then I will wander down to finally eat breakfast, check my emails, see if there's any early engagement on my videos. and then go from there. Beyond that, I'll wander down to a coffee shop, one of my favorites. I rotate between 3 in the area, and then I'll start about writing the great fantasy story iteration of the day. Depending how long or what type of scene I'm writing, whether or not I am suffering from a little bit of writer's block or just having a slower start to the day that can last anywhere from 2 hours, 3 hours, and on top of that, it's once I get back, I need to do a voiceover, which to record it, I mean, it's ends up being anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes of content, but to record, to mix, to upload that to the thing, to work with ChatGPT to get me an AI image just as like a concept art for the posting. We're looking at probably 4 hours worth of work start to finish, so that's a whole half day. Beyond that, then, I'll want to make a video for like a Fantasy Foundations piece. Shout out my other podcast, Fantasy Foundations. You can find that on Spotify and on Substack. It's just one of those things where that's been lying dormant just because it's like, yeah, if it's early on in the week, I still need to make a pod tax episode to be uploaded Wednesday and Friday. So we're talking about if we want to record a pod tax episode, that's immediately, anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes just to record. And then to mix takes another 20. So we're already looking at an hour. So it's one of those things where all of this stuff adds up. And then it's like if I want to make more YouTube videos or more TikToks or YouTube videos or anything else for TGFS, if I have an idea, I'll make a couple of those a day, post to 5 different sites as I do it. So, and then beyond that, it's like doing socials for TGFS or making something for Podtax, or all of it comes together with just sheer volume of posts and ideas. And I think that people need to understand that the content that we are consuming doesn't just happen. And that's why there are literally teams of producers who do all of that. My job is editor-in-chief for Tax Media, but underneath that, I'm lead producer, lead content writer, lead marketing manager, lead social media manager, like all of these different things. And that's great because it's going to look great on my resume, but at the same time, it's like doing all of that in a full day, which is a full day, also is taking my attention away from searching for a quote-unquote real job. Not that this isn't a real job, but you understand the point. But looking for a job that, for the time being, can pay me money. And that doesn't even take into consideration that what I do is also something that is heavy. I would love if every bit of news or a piece of media that I covered for all things tax was positive. But inherently, it's not, just because of how stratified and divided the political spectrum of ideology is these days. Yet the work is important, and the discipline to show up, somebody's got to do it. To help people understand the relationships, to help build empathy as a society, we're going to have to reconcile with these issues. And I can understand how exhausting it is because I'm one of the people who are trying to do it every day. And through that, there's a discipline to keep showing back up, to keep making things. Like I said, this is going to go live at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. It is 9:43 as I look at the clock right now. Deadlines are tight, but showing up to do the work is what matters. And that's what's kind of got me thinking today is I'm exhausted. And for a hot second, I was like, you know what? I'll only do one pod tax this week. But then something in my gut was like, well, no, don't lose the streak. Don't sacrifice the ability to make something that can be important to someone who's listening just because you're fucking tired? And I am tired. Like, it's just where we draw the line of reality versus consistency too certainly does matter. And showing up when things get tough. I mean, it's that old cliche saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, or some bullshit like that. But it's not so much bullshit. It's just cliche. It's just in our world, whether, it's our job, it's our family, it's our friends, our relationships, whether our dog has swallowed a bag of chocolate covered raisins, or something that requires us to be responsible, to take the lead, to put in the effort that requires us to be authoritative of our own timelines. When those moments come to pass, shirking that responsibility isn't going to help anything. Not producing, even if it doesn't feel like you're getting the engagement you want, even if it doesn't feel like you're being heard or listened to, the effort matters. Putting forth in does get something out. It just might not feel so readily present within the affectations of our desires. And maybe that's a causal relationship with the fact that we are so bite-sized, piece-driven today. Like, our dopamine levels are so low that we're just seeking the next constant source of something that's going to fuel us. Perhaps that we get bored with things easily is just a resultant of the fact that that's the world we live in nowadays. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't show up and still try. Because when things become minute and the reward feels lower and lower for each, it means that we have to keep pumping out more and more things. And every now and again, one of those things, every one of our measures, one relationship that we try and work through, or argument that we have, or piece of internet content we produce is going to land. And those are the things that's like keep us going towards the next big thing. But they can be few and far between, and going through the process of building can feel, well, not validating, especially when the results don't match the effort you're putting in. Because I can tell you definitively, this job is more demanding than any I have ever had. And that's saying something, because I've worked corporate. I've done all that. And it's like, but I'm feeling so much more at home and happy and purpose-driven because this is something that I'm making. But it's at the same time, it's like, gah, everything that I'm doing, why isn't it paying off? Why aren't people subscribing? Like, I heard something recently where someone, I forget exactly what the theme was, but someone said, let's challenge the idea of why as being, I don't like this. Because when people are asking why, that's what they're actually saying. They're saying, I don't understand this, I don't like this, I want this to change. Why is this happening? And as I reflect on that and I ask, why isn't everything that I'm doing paying off? Why aren't I gaining subscribers? Why am I not getting monetization? Why is it all this? It's because I don't like that reality and I want to change that reality. And asking those questions is something that is going to purpose drive me forward into finding a solution. And I think that asking that question why can be synonymous for all of us. Especially, to go back to the topics that matter, that with politics and what we feel about work, if we have the tenacity and the bravery to ask that question why, and then pair it with I don't like this, how this feels within me, then we can then we can ask ourselves, how do we want to feel? Right? Because ultimately, if this is a podcast about relationships, the one we need to cultivate most is the one within ourselves. And if we have that drive, that willingness to ask ourselves, okay, why don't I like this? What is this making me feel that I wish was different? And how do I best contribute towards making that change in a positive and productive way? Those are the questions I think all of us can ask as a society. But in order to really make that change, what we need to do is show up. Show up when it's uncomfortable. Show up when you're tired and you don't really feel like making anything. Show up when your partner is feeling distant or avoidant. Showing up when, things just don't make sense. Showing up is oftentimes something, like, it can be the hardest thing that we have to do, because oftentimes it can feel fruitless. But I'm here to tell you that no matter whether or not it actually feels that way, it's not fruitless. Every action you take, everything that we do as a society together, individual or collective, contributes towards the betterment of both our psyche and our being, and like our contribution to the world. It's one of those things where it does feel like there's diminishing returns at some point, but that consistency, that slow growth, eventually snowballs. Maybe that's what I'm banking on with tax and TGFS. I don't know. But the reality is that if I want to do it, if I want to make it worthwhile, if this is going to be something that is going to last and make sense, I'm going to need to continue to show up. Regardless of whether or not I'm going to be working later nights, or like once I get or need to get a full-time job, quote unquote, for a day job, like if I'm going to have to do that, then it's still going to be something where I'm not going to just stop doing this. Tax media isn't just going to go away, but it is going to take on a different form that is sustainable to my sense of well-being. And I would really, really, really prefer not to do that. So if you would please give a like, give a subscribe, give a share, and of course hit the little button above if you're on Substack, of course. You know, I think one of the hardest things about doing what I do, and I think what a lot of people can resonate with, is the fact that asking for help in the form of people giving a subscription or just being a part of this journey feels foreign. Because, throughout my life, it's always been the case where everything that I've done, I've always been able to figure out on my own. And I think there's a reconciliation that needs to happen within myself and maybe within society as a whole of like, it's okay to be proud of everything that we do. It's okay to say, I want recognition for this in the form of monetary gain. How to get from that point can literally be as simple as asking. And maybe that's what this whole podcast is about. It's just me asking you, dear listener, if you would please subscribe. Because that's really the trick of it, isn't it? You can't get something from somebody if you aren't willing to put yourself out there and ask for it. And if we're talking about our relationships in society, it can be us asking our elected representatives to change their stance on a policy that you don't like. It can be having conversations with our neighbors as to say, like, well, why would you vote for X candidate when I think you should vote for Y, and having those conversations. It can be about just asking somebody out if you like them. And if you're rejected, you're rejected. That's okay. It can be about showing up for the gym. Because if we're asking those why questions of like, well, why do I go to the gym? And that's related back. It's like, because I don't like this feeling. I don't like this feeling that people that I know are voting for this candidate, or I don't like something that my elected representative is doing, or I don't like how I look or feel in the mirror. I don't like asking the questions why means that there's something inherently off beyond just trying to understand. I mean, when we're toddlers, when we're kids, you need to ask why as a very just matter-of-fact method of understanding. But as we grow older and understanding has taken place, why becomes a reflection of something feels wrong, I don't like it, why is it this way? Maybe that's the clarity there. It's the why is it this way versus just the standard question of why and understanding. And whether that's a business or something we hold dear within our general population, it takes time and effort to keep showing up, to keep asking those questions, to keep the pressure on, to let the snowball roll and build. Because change isn't going to happen overnight as much as we want it to, as much as we're used to it nowadays. And so remembering that we can have those moments of saying, well, this sucks. I want things to be different. Well, why do I want this thing to be different? Because I feel bad about it. Something doesn't make sense. Because pride and feeling bad don't need to be mutually exclusive. You can have pride in what you do and what you create, and you can also feel shitty about the fact that it's like, well, why isn't this catching on? What can I do differently? What am I missing? I don't like how it's not taking off. I don't like how I didn't get enough traction here, but what can I do differently? And being willing to learn and think about different things. It's not just about like wanting to make change for the sake of making change. It's about finding a common ground resolution between you and the other party, because some of the times you're not going to get it every single way that you want. That just isn't how life works. Being able to reconcile and come to compromise is what we are seeking here. And that does mean that maybe the compromise, in my case, is getting a job, another job, to backfill my monetary income until I can make this something that is sustainable to my own interest. And maybe that's having a conversation with your partner about, I don't know, what you expect out of the relationship and understanding where your faults lie and as much as theirs do. Or maybe it's understanding that the candidate that you support might not have all the same views that you support, but on the spectrum of what you believe to be good in this world, maybe they have a little bit more than you're giving them credit for. So when we think about these issues, when we think about the discipline it takes to show up and be present with the issues at hand, we also need to remember that it's a two-way street, that we don't need to trade something, but we need to meet people, meet the thing, meet the item, meet the job, meet the task where it's at. And validate that situation for what it is and not try and make it something that it isn't. Because at that point, we're just fooling ourselves. And we're living in this gray area of non-understanding and dissociation. But it's time, I think, for us to start reassociating with the world as we know it. And it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fair. But it is necessary to ensure that we, society, ourselves, the social contract that we govern together, is salient and sustainable now until it isn't. But doing the work is what counts. Showing up is what counts. Being persistent is what counts. Keeping a streak is what counts. Being the person that you want to be in the moment, even when anything else feels more safe, counts. Showing up matters. And that's something I think we should all remember now and into the future. With that, though, friends, I think I will bid you adieu on this fine Friday afternoon. My name is Cameron Pratt, and it has been a pleasure to host you today. Be sure to like, share, and of course, subscribe to this Podtax. The best way and easiest way to support Podtax is to subscribe on Substack. There you can find paid membership trials. I'm tinkering around with how to produce different things that would actually give you some exclusive content. We might even do an extra podcast every single week. Oh my God. Just as well, be sure to check out my sibling publication, The Great Fantasy Story. That, as I mentioned before, is a never-ending story where there's a chapter every single weekday that goes out to you. Why would you pay $20, $30 for a book when you can pay me $5 a month and get something every single day? But for now, you can find all things tax at Tax Media on Substack, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and now on YouTube. For The Great Fantasy Story, you can find everything there at The Great Fantasy Story in all the same places. Until next time, this is Podtax.